to this week's hashtag Finance Friday, and I wonder if you can relate. So I wonder which of these pictures you can relate to today. Do you feel like you're sort of just making it through one day after another? Or do you sort of feel like you're grimacing to get through the day? Or maybe you feel like you're a little bit upset and grumpy as you're making your way through this year. Maybe you feel like you would rather just give up, you're tired of paddling, or just like, oh, I just cannot absolutely do this anymore. I can totally relate if you feel like any of these ones today. So this month we are talking about burnout, because as we head into May, the year is well on its way and it's getting harder to stay excited and committed to the everyday drudgery, right? So as entrepreneurs, business owners, and even employees, it's so important that we take care of ourselves. And so this month we want to dive a little bit deeper into this whole concept of burnout and hopefully help you to get through the month unscathed. So let's start with just understanding what burnout actually is. So burnout is when you feel beyond stressed, like it is something that's physical, emotional, social, occupational, and even spiritual. And here are some questions that you can just sort of ask yourself to gauge where you are at in terms of the burnout scale. So firstly, have you become cynical or critical at work? Do you drag yourself to work and have trouble getting started? Have you become irritable or impatient with co-workers, customers, or clients? And do you lack the energy to be consistently productive? Do you find that it's hard to concentrate? Do you maybe lack satisfaction from your achievements? Do you feel disillusioned about your job? Now, are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to feel better, or to simply not feel at all? Have your sleep habits changed? And are you troubled by unexplained headaches, stomach or bowel problems, or other physical complaints? Well, burnout is unfortunately super prevalent in entrepreneurship, even more so than within an ordinary workplace. But let's go have a look at why that is. And I want to just cover 5 factors or 6 factors that will explain why, as entrepreneurs, we are so susceptible to burnout. Firstly, there's a lack of control. Now, if you think about it, within entrepreneurship, we, to a large degree, have an inability to influence decisions that affect us. For example, your schedule, your assignments, or your workload. And all of that could lead to burnout. Now, I know that we have some degree of control over what jobs we take on, but at the end of the day, as we go through, you'll see some others, it's not always that easy to actually have control. So it might even be as a result of a lack of resources to be able to do your job. Then secondly, you might have unclear job expectations. Now, if you're unclear about the degree of authority you have or what your supervisor or others may expect from you, you're not likely to feel comfortable at work. So if you think about it, you're your own supervisor, right? But how often do you really clarify what you expect from yourself? Then thirdly, dysfunctional workplace dynamics. In an ordinary workplace, perhaps you work with an office bully, or you feel undermined by colleagues, or your boss micromanages your work, and that can all contribute towards job stress. And you might find that these roles are often fulfilled by your clients as well. You know, that demanding client that just drains you every time you wish you could ignore that call. No, that's the reality. Fourthly, extremes of activity. So when a job is so monotonous or so chaotic that you need constant energy to remain focused, that can easily lead to fatigue and job burnout. Then fifthly, lack of social support. If you feel isolated at work and in your personal life, you might feel more stressed. And again, with entrepreneurship, this is so prevalent because entrepreneurship is a very, very lonely journey. So unless you have the right support system that rallies around you, it becomes really lonely. And then number 6, work-life balance. So if your work takes up so much of your time and effort that you don't have the energy to spend with your family and friends, you might burn out really quickly. And as entrepreneurs, work-life balance is just actually something that does not happen, right? So there are a couple of risk factors that you need to think about. So you might be more likely to experience burnout if you fall within the following categories. 1, you identify so strongly with work that you lack balance between your work life and your personal life. Secondly, you have a high workload, including overtime work. Remember those weekends where you just keep on working because there's so much to do. Thirdly, you try to be everything to everyone. Number 4, you work in a helping profession such as healthcare. Number 5, you feel like you have little or no control over your work, especially if you need to make sure that you're hitting those targets so that you can earn money. And number 6, your job might be monotonous. Now, I think as entrepreneurs, our job is not necessarily monotonous, but we can definitely relate to a lot of the others. I can specifically relate to the fact that I sometimes feel like I need to be all things to all people, whether it's my employees or whether it's my clients. So sometimes the best solution is actually just to say no, but it's so hard. So let's just have a look at how burnout can affect our profitability as well as our productivity. Because as you know, everything at UPvisor here is about productivity and profitability. So let's have a look at profitability first. So with some research that they've done globally, they say that burnout costs us between 125 and 190 billion US dollars every year. Now in rands, that is 1.8 to 2.75 trillion rands per year in healthcare costs. Like that is just absolutely ridiculous. And researchers estimate that workplace stress accounts for 8% of national spending on healthcare. That's so unnecessary, right? Because something can be controlled. Burnout often leads to disengaged employees, and they cost their employers 34% of their annual salary as a result. And we've spoken about disengaged employees before. And it's also responsible for a significant amount of employee turnover, between 20% to 50%, depending on your organization. So we've previously have spoken about this, and the picture is not pretty. You know, with high staff turnover, the cost just increases so much because you have to retrain and re-recruit, and it's just so much. So that's firstly profitability. Then let's have a look at productivity. So the research really is clear. Long hours backfire for both people and for companies. Now, in a study of consultants by Erin Reed, a professor at Boston University's Questrom School of Business, big mouthful, managers couldn't tell the difference between employees who actually worked 80 hours a week and those who just pretended to. Now, think about that. That's scary, right? Numerous studies done by the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health and some colleagues there found that overwork and the resulting stress can lead to all sorts of health problems, whether it's absenteeism, high employee turnover, and even rising health insurance costs. And all of those things we need to consider, right? It's really something that we need to remember and keep in mind. And if you think about it, you're simply more likely to make mistakes when you're tired. And most of us tire more easily and quickly than we think we do, or than we would care to admit. And actually only 1 to 3% of the population can sleep 5 or 6 hours a night without suffering some performance drop-off. I'm not part of that percentage of the population. And even worse, for every 100 people that believe that they're in this category, actually only 5 are. Those are scary statistics. And the research on the performance-destroying effects of sleeplessness alone should really make everyone see that there is not much wisdom in pulling all-nighters. So research has suggested that as we burn out, we have a greater tendency to get lost in the weeds. So we get distracted by everything and we just actually do not have a clear focus. So overall, the story of overwork is literally a story of diminishing returns. If you keep overworking, you'll progressively work more stupidly on tasks that are increasingly meaningless. I mean, what kind of equation is this? Who wants that? So there are ways that we can manage this. And we'll talk a little bit more about this next week as we talk about some tools that can help you to mitigate burnout. And as a result, help to increase your productivity and profitability in your business. At the end of this month, I'm really excited. We'll be having a chat to Elsie Heidenrich about burnout and labor relations. In other words, what are our obligations and legal implications for us as employers? It's going to be a really great session. Really make sure that you tune in for that. And then we are also launching a cool new service called Hire a Comedian this month. So watch the space as we talk a little bit more about that next week and delve into a little bit more detail. So until next week, make sure that you're getting some rest, and that's maybe just go think about what I have shared today. How are you tracking in terms of burnout? Until next week. Bye-bye.